In a sport measured by precision and milliseconds, Gilles Villeneuve raced like a man with no time to waste. He lived life in the fast lane, pushing the limits every time he climbed into his Ferrari. His most iconic moment came in the 1979 Canadian Grand Prix, a jaw-dropping battle against René Arnoux, where the two drivers went wheel-to-wheel in a race that would forever be etched in history. But in 1982, as he geared up for qualifying at Zolder, Belgium, no one could have anticipated the tragedy that lay ahead. Join us as we cover the story of Gilles Villeneuve, from his humble beginnings to the glory, and the tragic moment that still echoes through the racing world. Gilles Villeneuve was born on January 18, 1950, in the small town of Berthierville, Quebec. His father, a piano tuner by trade, had a hidden passion for car stunts. That love for speed and thrill quickly passed on to Gilles. At just 5 years old, Gilles built his first car, using a lawnmower engine. He didn't just play with it, he raced it, tearing up the backyard and pushing the limits of what his homemade machine could do. Rather than scolding him, his father smiled, proud of the boy's audacity and ingenuity. By the age of 9, Gilles was already behind the wheel, learning to drive on quiet country roads and empty fields. For his 15th birthday, Gilles received a 1957 MGA, a $100 gift from his father. While most teenagers would have just driven around, Gilles had a different idea. He took it apart. He modified it, fine-tuned it, and then began racing it with his friends. Soon after, he bought a Ford Mustang and dropped in a massive 8-liter engine, determined to make it as fast as possible. He tried drag racing. He tried oval racing, but neither gave him the thrill he was looking for. Gilles wanted something harder, something that would push him to the limit. He found it in snowmobiles. In the early 1970s, snowmobile racing was huge in Canada, though it wasn't the glamorous world of motorsport that many would imagine. The tracks were treacherous, icy, and often blizzard-ridden, with minimal visibility and near-zero grip. By the time Gilles reached his early 20s, he had already claimed the title of Canadian Snowmobile Champion, establishing himself as a prominent name across the country. In that same year, he married Joan Barth, and the couple had 2 children, Jacques and Melanie. But with the growth of his family came the weight of new challenges. Money was tight, and racing proved to be an expensive pursuit. For a period, Gilles found himself depending more on his snowmobile career for financial support than on his love for racing cars. After dominating the Canadian snowmobile circuit, Gilles Villeneuve's hunger for a greater challenge was far from satisfied. In 1973, he took a bold step forward and enrolled in the Jim Russell Racing School at Le Circuit Mont-Tremblant, aiming to secure his racing license. His entry into motorsport began with local car racing, where he competed in the Formula Ford Series in Quebec. His fearless and aggressive driving style quickly turned heads, gaining both admiration and criticism. Gilles entered 10 races that year and won 7, instantly claiming the title of Quebec Regional Formula Ford Champion on his very first attempt. In 1974, Gilles Villeneuve made the leap to Formula Atlantic. However, his rise was halted by a brutal crash that left him with a broken leg. Gilles returned in 1975, securing his first win in the series and finishing 5th in the overall standings. At the Trois-Rivières Street Circuit in Quebec, in 1976, Gilles outmaneuvered some of the biggest names in motorsport, James Hunt, Alan Jones, and Patrick Tambay. This wasn't just a lucky run. Hunt was impressed by Gilles' sheer skill, returned to McLaren and said, "This guy, he is something else." McLaren saw the potential in the young Canadian and offered him a shot, up to 5 races in a third car. Gilles' opportunity to step into the world of Formula One was finally within his grasp. His debut came at the 1977 British Grand Prix, where he was handed the outdated M23 car. Still, Gilles pushed it to its limits, qualifying 9th. But race day wasn't kind to him. A faulty temperature reading forced him to slow down, costing him valuable time. Yet, doubts remained within McLaren. Team manager Teddy Mayer questioned whether Gilles was truly worth the investment, and in the end, the team chose to back Patrick Tambay instead, leaving Gilles without a seat. Little did he know, someone from Ferrari had been watching that race. In August of 1977, Gilles Villeneuve made the trip to Maranello and met face-to-face with the legendary Enzo Ferrari himself. During the test session at Fiorano, Gilles reminded Enzo of Tazio Nuvolari, a small, fearless man who raced with pure instinct and heart. Enzo made his decision. He offered Gilles a contract to race the final two Grands Prix of the 1977 season, with a full-time seat promised for 1978. He once said if he had three wishes, they would be simple: to race, to make it a Formula One, and to drive for Ferrari. By the end of that year, all three had come true. However, the road ahead was far from straightforward. His first year with Ferrari was riddled with struggles. The car, although blistering fast, was a mechanical nightmare, plagued by reliability issues and inconsistency. In 1979, everything started to come together for Ferrari. They unveiled a new Formula One car, faster, sharper, and more reliable than anything they'd had before. This was the moment they had been waiting for, and at the center of it all was Gilles Villeneuve. He won 3 races: South Africa, Long Beach, and Watkins Glen. But there was one moment that stood out above the rest. It came at the French Grand Prix in Dijon, where Villeneuve found himself in a thrilling battle for second place with René Arnoux. The two swapped positions over and over, their cars touching on multiple occasions. It was a fight for the ages, and when it was over, Gilles simply grinned and said, "That was fun." In 1981, Gilles welcomed Didier Pironi as his new teammate, and the two quickly became friends. The season brought 2 of Gilles' most memorable wins. At that year's Canadian Grand Prix, Gilles damaged his front wing early on. Instead of retiring, he pressed on, driving through the rain with the wing blocking his view. Eventually it broke off, but he still managed to finish third. It was a kind of grit and audacity only Villeneuve could pull off. However, Gilles was faced with the harsh reality of the sport's dangers when he suffered a serious crash during a testing session in France. While he walked away from the wreckage, it was a stark reminder of just how close the sport could bring drivers to the edge of life and death. He returned to the track with the same fire in his heart. However, the competition was becoming increasingly fierce. The 1982 season promised to be Gilles' year, a chance to finally capture the championship. But it would also be a season that would end in tragedy. At the San Marino Grand Prix, Gilles Villeneuve had been leading, with teammate Didier Pironi close behind. Ferrari had issued clear team orders: hold position. Gilles respected that, but with only a few laps to go, Pironi ignored those orders. He passed Gilles and took the win. To the outside world, it looked like a routine overtake, but to Gilles, it felt like betrayal, the kind that cuts deep. After the race, he was livid, silent, tense, visibly shaken. In the garage, he reportedly swore never to speak to Pironi again. 2 weeks later, Formula One moved to Zolder, Belgium, for the next race of the 1982 season. Tension still hung heavy in the air. He hadn't let go of his frustration, and he was determined to out-qualify him and prove himself. The qualifying session was intense. Gilles had already posted a lap time just a fraction slower than Pironi's. Some believed he was chasing the perfect lap, while others thought it was more personal. With just 8 minutes left in the session, Villeneuve went out for one last push. He came over a small hill at full speed and saw Johan Mass ahead. Mass noticed the Ferrari speeding toward him and moved to the right to get out of the way. But at that same moment, Gilles also moved right, thinking that was the best path to pass. It was a terrible misunderstanding. Gilles' car hit the back of Mass's car at over 125 miles per hour. The Ferrari launched into the air, flying more than 330 feet. It broke into pieces and flipped violently along the edge of the track. Still strapped to his seat, but now without his helmet, Gilles was thrown another 165 feet into a fence at the side of the course. Other drivers nearby stopped immediately. A doctor arrived within seconds. Gilles still had a pulse, but he wasn't breathing. A helicopter then flew him to University St. Raphael Hospital in Leuven. There, doctors found he had broken his neck. He was placed on life support while his wife, Joanne, was flown in, racing against time, holding on a hope that was already slipping away. Experts were called, but there was nothing more they could do. At 9:12 p.m. on May 8, 1982, Gilles Villeneuve was gone. An investigation followed. It ruled the crash a tragic misjudgment, one of those split-second moments where instinct takes over and there's no turning back. Johan Mass was cleared of any fault. The death of Gilles Villeneuve sent shockwaves through the racing world. A young man from a quiet town in Quebec who climbed to the top of international motorsport on sheer determination and courage. His passing brought the nation to a standstill. Fans mourned openly in the streets. In Europe, the Formula One community fell silent. One of its most electrifying talents was gone. The number 27 Ferrari, his car, became immortalized, not just as a machine, but as a symbol of a driver who gave every ounce of himself every time he stepped onto the track. And though Gilles never saw his own dream completed, it would live on through his son. In 1997, Jacques Villeneuve captured the Formula One World Championship, bringing full circle a legacy that had once been cut short. He raced not to be remembered, but because he loved it. The speed, the danger, the roar of the crowd. It was never about points or politics. It was about the next corner, the next duel, the next chance to do something nobody else dared to try. That's why fans still talk about him. That's why his name still echoes in the paddock. Decades after his final lap, in the history of Formula One, there are champions, and then there are legends. Gilles Villeneuve was both.